Joining us on the line right now is Dr. Walid Phares, author of The Lost Spring, U.S. Policy in the Middle East and Catastrophes to Avoid. Good morning to you, Dr. Phares.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me today.
All right. Listen, here's my first question for you. U.S. has pulled out all its remaining personnel out of Yemen because of a deteriorating security situation. I thought, if I remember correctly, that Yemen was supposed to be like the poster child for Obama's successful foreign policy. Doesn't seem like it's worked out so well.
It did not work out. Unfortunately, Yemen is moving not just as a failure. That's the minimum. That's acceptable, a failure in foreign policy. Yemen is becoming a catastrophe. So weren't able to contain Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has multiplied. Now Al-Qaeda controls probably about 25% of the center of the country. But worse than that is that the pro-Iranian militia known as Al-Houthi, with a name reminding us of Hezbollah, Ansarullah, have seized the capital a few weeks ago, marched to the center of the country. They have seized the third city, Taz, and the international airport. And now they are heading to the second city, historic Aden, in the south. Now, if that happens, you are going to have a pro-Iranian militia in control of two-thirds of Yemen, reaching the coast of the Red Sea with all what that means for the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. So that is an earth-shattering geopolitical catastrophe that we are seeing there, while a few months ago and last year the administration said, oh, this is a success. That's not a success.
The Iranians are in Yemen. The Iranians are in Iraq. The Iranians are everywhere right now.
Well, we have been briefing Congress for many years now that if Iran is not stopped, I'm not talking about the nuclear issue only, not stopped on the ground in Iraq. When we left Iraq, we left behind us a pro-Iranian government, and now Iran is actually leading the Iraqi forces that we are training. Iran is in Syria, allied to the Assad regime, and of course controls Lebanon through Hezbollah. Then now we have this thrust into Yemen, but that's not all. Because now the Arabian Peninsula, that would be the Gulf states, are concerned that the Iranians are going to begin their activities in eastern Arabia, where 80% of the oil is. So we are negotiating with Iran in the hope that they will comply with a so-called nuclear deal, and they are actually blitzkrieging the countries of the Middle East one after the other.
Dr. Phares, over the weekend, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, spoke to worshippers in that country and said, "Death to America." I assume that you agree that the United States should not be sitting down at a negotiation table with this country's leadership at this time if they continue to use rhetoric like this. They haven't changed their rhetoric, by the way, targeted toward us over the decades since they've been in power, right?
They have not changed the narrative, and the man you mentioned is no one but the actual top decision maker in Iran. He's the head of the revolution. He's the one who commands the Pasdaran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Ayatollah Khamenei. When he says this to America, and his diplomats are delaying and stalling in Geneva, this is a redux of what happened in the late 1930s in Europe. The West at the time was negotiating with Hitler, and he was absorbing Czechoslovakia and Poland. I mean, this is almost a replay of what happened in the 30s. Obviously, the Obama administration is making a big mistake by negotiating with a regime which is not stopping on the ground. And in Iran, while they are negotiating about the nukes, and we know we didn't get to any results, they are multiplying and multiplying. Guess what? The delivery system, these missiles that can reach now far in Europe, probably in a few months from now, our shores here. And why would they have long-range missiles? To deliver flowers? No. To deliver a lethal weapon, that would be the atomic weapon.
So according to the Obama administration, if they don't have these negotiations with Iran, Iran's just going to move toward a nuclear weapon anyway. The only way we can stop them and get in the way is if we peacefully negotiate some sort of resolution. What would you say to that, Dr. Phares?
Well, that's a theory. It could have worked 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and last. So even if I'm the good intention analyst, I would say, okay, show us. Nothing has stopped in Iran from the machinery that is being built to produce at the end of it the nuclear weapon. Control on the ground, backing terrorism, developing the missiles, militarizing, large segments of Iran on the one hand, and on the other hand, of course,
you have an Iranian narrative that did not change. Even when we negotiated with Gorbachev at the last year of the Soviet Union, many things have changed. You would negotiate with an Iran if there is a Gorbachev there, at least. That's the minimum. You don't have it. You have a Brezhnev, you have a Stalin now in Iran.
Well, so, we have all of this bad news and show how many times in that region Iran has acted as a bad actor. And yet we are trying to negotiate with them at the same time that we're sort of turning our back on our most reliable ally in that region here in the United States, from our perspective, has always been Israel.
Well, the story of the Obama administration in Israel is now going to be a chapter in history. I mean, there have been administrations who've criticized some Israeli policies. We've seen that under the Bush first administration, even under Eisenhower when we had the issue of the Suez Canal, but nothing like this. Taken the case of Israel to the United Nations Security Council, this is changing every geopolitical norm that the United States had and actually not reflecting the consensus. I mean, you know better than I do because you interview the members of Congress that the majority of this Congress is absolutely against this policy. But let me add one thing that maybe the audience doesn't know. It's not just about Israel. The administration is also doing something very negative with Egypt, which basically is fighting Al-Qaeda and ISIS. We are cutting aid to Egypt. We are also going to Iran to try to negotiate and ignoring Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Jordan. Almost a majority of Arab moderate countries we are ignoring in addition to the crisis with Israel. So our entire Middle East policy doesn't seem to be going in the right direction.
All right, and so what should we do? What can the Congress do about it right now? Because foreign policy traditionally has been the purview of the executive branch.
True. Foreign policy is under the president, under the administration, but foreign policy needs fuel. There is no foreign policy without many things that Congress can and should do. One is the budgeting. Number two is basically the confirmation. And number three is visibility. Congress could do way more by inviting more than just Prime Minister Netanyahu to address the American public. What the administration basically could go under is a tremendous pressure by the American public, but we have to listen to leaders from the region. I would vote right now to invite President Sisi. Come to Congress, tell us the story of Egypt. I would invite the leaders of the Iranian opposition. Come to us and tell us what's going on inside Iran. I think that is something Congress can and should do.
Dr. Phares, really quickly, we just had a story of 11 different medical students who left London to go via Turkey into Syria to help give medical aid to ISIS members who are fighting. And the local British lawmakers say these guys have been brainwashed. They think they're doing some sort of humanitarian work there. What would you say to a parent who's facing this dilemma of their child wanting to do humanitarian work for these ISIS terrorists?
We've heard before many young men and women who said the same thing. They're going to help the Syrian people. That was in 11, 12, and 13 and ended up, either supporters and became foreign fighters or hostages and were killed. Either way, going to the ISIS-controlled areas is not something that we should ever accept. We should put a ban. I call it a ban on traveling to the Caliph. We are fighting. This is a genocidal force that is killing Yazidis and Assyrians and hostages. So it would be a very bad idea to allow citizens of the UK, of Europe, of the United States, of any country
you think
to provide any support to ISIS.
The West should ban travel to those regions. All right.
Ban traveling to ISIS, even to the edges, to the areas edging, at the borders of ISIS. This is security threat.
Thank you, Dr. Walid Phares.
Got to leave it there. Thank you so much.